Welcome back. We've made it all the way down to Module 13, and this is the module where we're going to discuss payroll. Over in this first section, I want to give you a quick overview of using the payroll service that QuickBooks has. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is that it is not free. It's just like hiring any other payroll service. You need to shop around and see which one works best for your company. Let me go ahead and give you a quick rundown of the different plans that they have available, and then that way you can see some of the pricing and what each one has to offer. This is just a quick price comparison from the Intuit website. You'll notice that they're having a sale right now, 70% off, and they have 3 different payroll options available. You can start with the lower level, which is called the Core, the middle level is called Premium, and the higher level is called Elite. And they keep changing the names of these, so if you come in here and you see different names, it's still the same 3 plans. Let's look at the basic one first, the Core. This is for the small business owner who maybe has 1, possibly 2 employees, and it really only does a couple of things for you. Let me scroll to the bottom here and then I'll come back up, because I want you to see that all of the plans have these options here. And pretty much what this Core plan does is it allows you to go in every payday and specify that the employee worked 40 hours. It will spit out the deductions for you. The calculations will be correct because it will be the most updated payroll tax tables that are available. They will also automate your tax forms for you. There's a portal available as well. If you wanted to go in and see what's going on with your employees and their payroll, you'd be able to do that. The middle one, called the Premium, has a couple of additional features. One of them is, if you notice, they have same-day direct deposit, where the Core has next-day direct deposit. Also, you can grant users permission to go in and look at their data through the online portal. You can see there's HR Support Center and an expert setup review. They will actually look at what you've already done and let you know if it's set up correctly, where they don't do that over here. It's all left to you. If you go to the Elite over here, you'll see all of the things they have to offer. And you can see that there's a personal HR advisor, there's Elite onboarding done for you, and that's where they'll do some things for you as far as getting things set up. But there's a lot of things that the Elite does that the Core does not. You really don't need to spend the money on the Premium or Elite if you're a very small business owner. But if you have more than a couple of employees, you might consider going to the Premium. These 2 you're still in control of, and what that means is that when you actually look in the register, you still see the individual checks that were written, the direct deposits, etc., where you don't see that with the Elite. What happens with the Elite is after payday, you download the transactions into your checkbook register. And in the register, you will see 3 transactions. There will be one for the total of the net checks, there will be one for the total of all the deposits, and another one for their fee. So it just depends on how much money you want to spend, how many employees you have, that sort of thing. This would be a good time to try it since they've got 70% off their payroll. And the other thing is, if I go to the top here, you get a free 30-day trial for all of these. Just go to quickbooks.intuit.com and then make sure you look for payroll when you get there. And that's really all I want to tell you about how payroll works. You do need to sign up with the service before you can actually use the payroll feature. Let's go ahead now into section 2, and we're going to start talking about working with payroll items. Now that you've subscribed to one of the QuickBooks Payroll service options and you've gone through the payroll setup, we can now start talking a little bit about working with payroll items. Payroll items are items that you actually add to or deduct from an employee's paycheck. When you think of things like the payroll taxes, for example, those are things you deduct from their check. Maybe uniforms. Sometimes you add things to their check. You might give them a mileage reimbursement or a cell phone reimbursement. And all of those things need to be set up so that you can actually put them on different employees' records. Let's go ahead and flip over to QuickBooks and I'll show you how to work with those payroll items. The way you get to the payroll items list is go up to the menu and click on Employees, and then you'll come down and you'll see an option that says Manage Payroll Items. You can either add a new one or view or edit the existing ones, and let's just view or edit the payroll item list right now and see the existing ones. These are things you would add to or deduct from any employee's paycheck. Some of these will be automatically in this list because when you go through the payroll setup, it will ask you what state are you in, and based on some of that, it will set up some of these items. There are others that you will have to add. For example, health insurance, that would be one you'd need to add. If you needed a mileage reimbursement, you would have to add that. I want to go through and show you how to add a payroll item, and then you can walk through and add some on your own. We're going to add dental insurance. All I'm going to do is right-click anywhere on my screen and choose the new option. You can use the easy setup or the custom setup. I suggest you use the custom setup because it goes through and allows you to set up all of the settings that you need for this particular item. I'm going to click on Next, and the first thing it asks me is, what type of payroll item is this? Is it a wage, an addition, a deduction from their check? You can kind of see the others. Some of these are taxes. This is actually going to be a deduction from their check. I'll click Next. The next thing it asks you to do is to enter a name for the deduction. This one is going to say Employee Dental Insurance Payable. You're only allowed so many characters. You'll notice that I wasn't able to put the L and the E in there. I'm going to go ahead and click Next. And then it asks you to enter the name of the agency to which the liability is paid. Let's just say this is Blue Cross. If Blue Cross is not in the vendor list, it will ask you to quick add it. And then you can go ahead and enter the number that identifies you with that agency. The next thing is the liability account. This means when I actually collect dental insurance from my employee, I'm going to have to pay it forward. If you notice from the chart of accounts, have they set up all the payroll liabilities, and underneath are all these sub-accounts. And ours is going to be underneath, like we see health insurance down at the bottom. I'm just going to put a colon at the very end here, and then I'm going to type in dental insurance. All right, after I type that in, I'm going to hit the Tab key to leave the field. And it's going to tell me dental insurance is not in the account list, and I'll go set it up. It already knows it's an other current liability. It's a sub-account of payroll liabilities. We just need to put in the account number if we're using that feature, and then save and close. And now let's go look, and you'll see that dental insurance is on the list. I'm going to click Next to the bottom, and now it asks me about tax tracking type. Basically what this means is when payroll items appear on tax forms, then the tax tracking type determines how it's going to look and where it's going to end up on that form. If you're not going to use tax tracking for this, you just leave it on none, and we wouldn't for dental insurance. This question asks me if any of these taxes that you see here are affected by this payroll item, and they are not, so I'm going to click Next. How is this item calculated? Is it based on quantity? Is it based on hours, or neither? This would be neither. And is it based on gross or net? And we're going to go ahead and say it's on gross. And we're going to click Next. And now it'll ask for default rate and limit. This basically means if there's a flat rate you're going to charge everyone, you would plug this in. But if it's a different rate for each person, leave it on 0. There might also be a yearly limit. Let's just say it was $600, and that means that once you've collected that much for the year, you wouldn't collect it again until the next year. It's also going to restart this every year. Now I'm going to hit Finish, and it will ask you if you want to set up a scheduled payment for this item. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about scheduled payments over in section 5. So for right now, let's click OK, and you will see there is your dental insurance, and it is a deduction from their check. And that's how you're going to set up payroll items. Let me go ahead and have you go over now to section 4, and we'll talk about working with employees. Now that we have our payroll items set up, we can start setting up our employees. We needed to have those items set up first so that when we go to set up the employees, we can pull those items into each employee's setup. Let's go ahead and flip over to QuickBooks and start working with our employees. To see a list of your employees, you can access them from the home screen right here where it says Employees. This is your Employee Center. The first thing you'll notice when you come in is that your Employee Center looks just like the Customer and the Vendor Center. So you'll be familiar with a lot of how this is set up already. On the left is a list of active employees. You'll notice they're listed alphabetical by first name. If you want to see all of the employees, you choose All from this list, and then notice that if any of them were inactive, you would see an X to the left of their name. To make an employee inactive, just click where the blank space is to the left of their name. That will put an X there. And if you want to make them active again, you just click that X and that will take it off. I'll go back and look at active employees. The employee that you're clicked on, you're going to be able to see the employee information over here. This will be things like the employee's address, their city, state, zip, phone number. Over on the right, if there were any notes for this employee and they were pinned, you would see them right here. Also, there would be some reports you could look at if you wanted to related to this employee right over in this section. At the bottom, you see your Transactions tab, and these are all the transactions that happened related to this employee. Most of these will be paychecks. You might see a few every now and then, like they have one here that's just a regular check. That's most likely a reimbursement of some sort. The To-Dos tab would allow you to create a new to-do just by right-clicking and choosing Create New. The Notes tab would allow you to create a new note just by right-clicking and choosing Add New that way. And then the Sent Email would give you a list of all of the emails sent to this employee through QuickBooks. Let's look at what we've got up at the top of our screen here. I want to go over the New Employee option. You'll notice as we set this up, we'll be going through the tabs on the left here. Right now we're on the tab that says Personal, and this is where we're going to put in, starting with the employee name. This employee will be Scott Walker. Notice that Scott Walker is filled in where it says Print on Checks As. If Scott wants his checks printed with a different name, or you want to edit the name a little bit, you can do that. You have a place to put his Social Security number, his gender, his date of birth. You've got marital status, U.S. citizen, and ethnicity. Over on the right, if the employee is disabled, you can say yes or no here, and then you have a place to put in a description of his disability. If you have an I-9 form on file, you can choose yes or no from this list and specify when his work authorization expires. And if he's in the military, you can say yes or no here and tell QuickBooks what his status is. The next tab on the left is Address and Contact, and this is pretty self-explanatory. At the top is where you will have street address, city, state, and zip. The middle section is where you can have contact info like a phone number, if he has a fax, a website, things like that. And remember that these fields can represent anything you'd like them to be. There's also a place at the bottom for 2 emergency contacts. You can go ahead and put in their name, their phone number, and what relation they are to the employee. The next tab on the left is Additional Info. If you give your employees their own ID numbers, then you can plug it in here. You can also put in their birthday, the date of their last raise, and their spouse's name. And if you need to add another field, go down here where it says Define Fields and create your own. The next tab is your payroll info, and there's a few things here that I really want to point out. I mentioned a payroll schedule before, and I want to tell you what a payroll schedule is. If you have a lot of employees at your organization, you might have a group of them that are paid weekly and another group that are paid bi-weekly. If you create a payroll schedule and name them weekly or bi-weekly, then when it's time to run payroll, you can just specify that payroll schedule and QuickBooks will pay all of those people in that schedule automatically. You'll automatically see the pay frequency for biweekly when I choose it because it was set up when they set up the payroll schedule. Also, if you're using the class feature, make sure you choose the class that would go with this. This section here has to do with the earnings. The first thing you'll see is it brought in an item called regular pay. If this employee is paid $20 an hour, that would be the regular pay. If they were a salaried employee like this, you would put in their yearly rate. What if this person works a lot of overtime? Then you might go ahead and pre-populate this with the overtime rate item, and notice it automatically calculates that hourly rate. You could also go ahead and put in the sick time and the vacation and those types of things, or you can wait and just add those onto the employee's actual paycheck. Over on this side, this is where all of those payroll items are that we talked about. If this employee frequently gets a mileage reimbursement, you can plug that in and then put in whatever the rate is that you normally would pay. And let's say this person also had health insurance. You could go ahead and plug that in, and then it would automatically show up when you go to create their paycheck. Let's go to the top and talk real quick about direct deposit. I just want to mention that this is where you could go and actually set this up with your bank. The next thing is taxes. This is where I'm going to set the taxes for federal and state for my employee. Under the federal tab, it asks what is the filing status, how many allowances, is there any extra withholding, and is this employee subject to Medicare, Social Security, Advanced Earned Income Credit, and federal unemployment tax, which is company paid. The state tab, you have the ability to specify the state the employee worked in and the state the employee is subject to withholding in. Sometimes people will work in one state, but they're subject to the withholding in another state. SUI is the state unemployment insurance, which is company paid, and SDI is the state disability insurance. You can also specify right here how many allowances this person is claiming. Also, if there was any extra withholding, you could put down here how much you are withholding. The next tab is Other, and some states actually have miscellaneous type taxes as well. It looks like for California they have this employee training tax. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and that's how you set up the taxes portion of this. Next is the sick and vacation. If you give your employees vacation time or sick time, then you'll want to fill this information in so that when you actually deduct it from their paycheck, it subtracts from this. The top part is for sick, the bottom part is for vacation, and it's the exact same questions. The first question is, how many hours were available as of today's date? How many hours were already used this year? Does this employee accrue their hours from the beginning of the year, every paycheck or every hour on the paycheck? How many hours were accrued at the beginning of the year? And what is the maximum number of hours they can accrue? Do you want to reset these hours each year? And if you do, how many can they carry over? When does the year begin? And when do they begin accruing sick time? Same questions for the vacation. You just fill all that in and then you click OK. And that's really what you need to know about setting up the payroll info. Let's go over to employment info. You're going to see there are 3 tabs: employment, leave of absence, and termination. A lot of this, again, you can kind of figure out. There's employment dates. When did you hire the employee? When did you adjust their service date? When did they get released? Here's some employment details. Are they part-time, full-time? Are they an officer of the company? Are they seasonal? And over here, you can put in some details about their job. Under the leave of absence tab, if the employee has left and they've taken a leave of absence, you can put in the start date, the expected return date, and the actual return date. You can also put in details about their leave, and then do they get paid when they're on leave, yes or no. If you terminated this employee, you can put in some termination dates here at the top, some information about the termination here, and then over here, if it's a severance, do they get severance pay, yes or no. One last tab on the left there is the workers' comp. If your employee falls under any of these workman's comp codes, you can select that one. If they're exempt, choose exempt from the list. And that's what you need to set up anytime you're setting up a new employee. I'm going to click OK there, and you'll see Scott Walker's in the list. There were a couple of other things at the top. The Manage Employee Information. You have the ability to add or edit a sales rep. It could be that you want to somehow attach a sales rep to this employee. You can also print their paychecks or their pay stubs here, or just a list of your employees and maybe their transactions. If you're using the time feature, this employee's time might be related to a particular customer or job. If that's the case, you can use the weekly timesheet and set those options, or a single activity. You can also export this employee list, maybe their transactions, or if you want to summarize the payroll data in Excel, you can do that as well. And the last thing is, we keep talking about doing the mail merges with Microsoft Word, and they do actually have some letters already set up to merge for employees. And that's going to be your options as far as your employees are concerned. That's going to wrap up Section 4, working with employees. Let's move over to Section 5 now. I want to talk to you about actually paying your employees when it's time to do payroll. Now that you have everything set up, paying the employees is actually a pretty easy process. We're going to go through and decide which employees to pay. We're going to double check that their pay looks correct, and then we're just going to hit the pay button. Let's flip over to QuickBooks and let's go ahead and run some payroll. When it's time to run payroll, you're going to come down here and click on Pay Employees. The first thing I want you to notice at the top of your screen is that if you have any payroll schedules set up, it will let you know that it's time to actually start one of those scheduled payrolls. You would select that payroll and you would click over here on Start Scheduled Payroll. If you were going to set up a new payroll schedule, this is where you would do that, edit one or delete one. If you don't have a payroll schedule or you aren't using that feature, you're just going to come over here and click on Start Unscheduled Payroll. There's a little bit of information at the top that we'll want to fill out. I'm going to go ahead and choose my pay period ending date. Let's say it is on the 29th. We'll choose our check date. We want to make sure we have the correct bank account the money's coming out of, and notice it does tell us what the balance is. Next, we can print paychecks on check stock, or we can tell QuickBooks to handwrite and assign check numbers, whichever we're going to do. Down at the bottom, you'll see all of your employees, and you're going to check off the ones that you plan to pay this period. What you're seeing over here where it says regular pay is the last time they were paid. Dan is a salaried employee, and that's why you don't see anything there, and we just set up Scott Walker. If they had any overtime last time, you would see it here, sick, vacation, salary, and then there's a total over to the right. For each of these employees, all you have to do is click on their name, and that's an actual link to preview their paycheck. You can go in and actually change the amount of hours if you need to. It could be that this time Elizabeth worked 3 hours of overtime as well. And if those hours apply to a particular job, you'll want to choose it from the drop-down list. Here's where their health insurance and other items are either deducted or added. If you were going to add a mileage reimbursement this time, for example, you would type it in here. If you're going to change the rate, you just override that and put in the number of miles. These are all the taxes that are company paid. These are all the deductions that come out of the employee's paycheck. You're going to be able to see here's their regular pay, and then there's their overtime, and then from there down you'll see a lot of these are deductions, and some are actually additions like the mileage to their check. You can edit any one of these if you wanted to, and when you're finished you're going to want to go ahead and save and close. And do that with each one of these employees. When you're ready, go ahead and hit continue at the bottom. And now it's giving you a list again of each employee, but you're going to see their gross pay, the total of the taxes, the total of the deductions, their net. Then you'll see the employer taxes, contributions, and total hours here. If all of this looks correct, then you just click on Create Paychecks down at the bottom. You'll notice in this case we got a message telling me that at least one paycheck has a negative pay amount, and that's because if you look at Scott Walker, we didn't put in any hours for Scott, but yet we took some deductions. So what we can do is we can go ahead and go to his check right here, and we can plug in his hours. Now we can go ahead and save and close at the bottom, and you can see all of that's changed. Now I can go ahead and create paychecks. It's telling me that I have 4 handwritten checks that I need to go ahead and take care of. I can go ahead and print them right here if I want to. I can also print the pay stubs. And by the way, these are already in the checkbook register. I'm going to go ahead and show you what a stub looks like. I'm going to preview that. And this is basically what their pay stubs are going to look like. What I want to do now is go ahead and close this and close out of everything all the way back. And the next thing we have to do is actually go ahead and talk about paying our payroll taxes. Why don't you go ahead and flip over to section 6, and I'll show you how to go through QuickBooks to pay those liabilities. We're going to wrap up module 13 with this last section, which is section 6, paying payroll taxes. This is actually the last step in this whole payroll process because you've actually deducted taxes, you've deducted things like health insurance, and you need to actually forward those things to the appropriate entities. And that's what QuickBooks will tell us to do. It'll actually tell us when to do it, and it'll actually help us by setting up all of the check for us, and then we just edit it and send it on. Let me go ahead and flip over to QuickBooks, and we'll look at how to take care of paying those liabilities. Before we leave this screen here, I just wanted to point out a couple of things. Here, you're going to see your recent payrolls. You can always go over here and click on any one of these if you want to go back and look at it. There's also some quick guides at the bottom. If you need some help on payroll, some different tips maybe, you can see some of those at the bottom. Under other activities, they've got some things like if you want to edit or void a check or maybe print your paychecks, you can go through that list. There's some reports, and then also QuickBooks can actually supply you with a check order or some labor law posters, those types of things. All of these are not free. You will have to pay for them. To get to the Payroll Liabilities tab, we're going to click right up here. And this is where it has a list of all of the liabilities that we have not yet paid. Notice it gives us the due date, it'll give us the status, who the payment's payable to, the method, and the period that you'll be paying for, along with the amount that's due. Let's say there's one of these you want to pay. Let's just say it's this health insurance right here. If you click on that and come over here where you see the amount due and click on that, then you're going to see here all of the paychecks that had health insurance on them. And so all of this is what you're actually paying when you pay that money. Now, once you've looked at that, if you close it and you're ready to actually pay it, you can click on View or Pay right down here, and it's going to actually have your check ready to go. All you have to do is fill in things like pay to the order of. Let's say that I pay this health insurance to Blue Cross. And if I wanted to add a memo here, I could do that. I can add a class. Anything I need to edit, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Once I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and hit Save and Close. And that one is gone from the list because it's already been paid. You'll see it show up here in this Payroll Liability Summary Report, and if you wanted to print the summary, you could at the bottom. You can go ahead and print that check as well, and if you don't want to do either one, you can hit Close at the bottom and it's done until the next time. And that's really all I wanted to show you about paying your liabilities. I do want to mention also, if you need to file your forms over here, that you can actually do that. You'd have to upgrade your payroll service and make sure you're paying for the subscription that includes that. Well, that's going to wrap up Module 13. We've been working with payroll. It is now time to move over to Module 14, and we're going to change focus and talk a little bit about a feature QuickBooks has called the Lead Center.
If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. Now, to get a free QuickBooks Pro 2020 introductory course, click over there. And Click over there to watch all the videos in this QuickBooks Pro 2020 playlist.